the change in coordinators will be gone.
Brian, the one question I had in my notes on the Green Bay Packers before we started recording this preview was, have they done enough in the offseason to move them forward? Well, they've answered that question in a massive way just as we've been recording, because they've only gone and traded for Micah Parsons.
Talk about timing, Connor. This is not what we expected this evening as we were previewing this NFC North. It's a huge move. It probably doesn't come as a surprise because of the impasse that was in Dallas. Jerry Jones was adamant he wasn't going to give him the contract. We spoke last week about the fact that he probably didn't need to give him this contract right now. But yeah, they've obviously had a huge offer from the Packers, and it kind of puts the Packers in a different thought process now around what's the expectation of the season. You know, look, we always know Green Bay Packers fans' expectations going into any season is that they're going to make the playoffs and make a serious push. The Micah Parsons trade, giving up 2 ones, I believe that's the news, and the $188 million contract over the course of the 4 to 5 years. It's going to make him the highest paid non-quarterback in the league. It's a significant move for the Packers, but it kind of matches their ambition that they feel they're ready to make that next step. It didn't really kind of play out that way in the manner of last season. They had a difficult loss in the playoffs. They looked stretched offensively in the playoffs with players dropping the ball and players injured, but they've retooled on defense, and the expectations are going to be significant now. We're going to see a week 1 game against the Lions, and we're going to talk about Hutchinson there for the Lions going up against Parsons, obviously on defense against defense. What's the ceiling for this team? I think, like push, I don't think it will change my opinion whether I believe they'll go to the Super Bowl. I think they're very much challenging for the division. It's a very competitive division. It's going to put so much on them. This is going to be huge. Just trying to digest the news, Connor. It's a lot to take in. For me and Kieran in particular, you know, we're not going to have to deal with Micah Parsons for 2 games over the course of the season, and in particular week 2. I'll let the other guys jump in here. For the Packers, for me, playoff push potentially. Not entirely sure it's going to lead to them being in the Super Bowl.
But Kieran, and I'm happy to pick it up there because I think that's an interesting point. And I do think, and as a Bears fan, I'm always looking at the Packers as the not only the noisy, but the more successful neighbours. They're one of the more interesting stories in the league this season for me because they've got so many arrows pointing up, such a young team, you know, that have made the playoffs now 2 consecutive years. They rebuilt without having to rebuild at all. They just came straight out of the traps with Jordan Love, handing over from Aaron Rodgers. Turned over the Cowboys in the wildcard round and gave the 49ers a damn good run of it 2 years ago. You know, didn't really lay it low, and, you know, we'll feel they probably didn't fire a shot against the Eagles last year. But the expectation is huge. So, you know, what do you got to do to succeed this year if you're the Packers? Realistically, you know, you can't get to the divisional round and lose again. That's where you were 2 years ago. Like, this fan base will be looking for, and this front office probably expects, and the players will want to get to at least a championship game to feel like they're moving forward in the way that they want to. So doing this, making a big move like this, bolstering Jeff Hafley's already a defense that looked like it was heading in the right direction and was the big highlight for the Packers last year. It's a bold move, and it's very un-Packers-like. They're not a team that tends to go all in. They draft and develop.
Yeah, I'm really shocked at this Parsons news. I was for sure that Jerry was just playing Jerry, and very similar to the documentary that's been going on right now on Netflix, just playing hardball and stringing people along. I'm very surprised with this. I see that Kenny Clark is one of the other players that's gone the other way to the Cowboys, so that's a big shock too. That kind of said with the Packers is, you know, they're for me, their need is really on the offense now. They got to see what Jordan Love, you know, is he going to deliver on all this promise that he showed after that Cowboys playoff game? They did what they needed to do. They needed to go out and get some weapons, some really, you know, some good caliber weapons. And they got Matthew Golden from Texas and Savion Williams from TCU. The problem with, if you recall last year, the Packers, they got off to a fast start with the wide receivers, Romeo Doubs and Dontavian Wicks, but they kind of faded by week 7, week 8, and they struggled offensively. I mean, there was drops. The production went way down after a good start. You know, but even players like Dobbs fell off too. They drafted where they needed to. They needed to get fresh weapons to kind of help out Jordan Love. And again, with a pretty solid O-line, it still needs a little bit of work. But when you got Rasheed Walker, Aaron Banks, and Jenkins out there, then you've got a solid kind of core in front of you. And with the defense has been bolstered with the Parsons move, linebackers looking pretty good, and secondary, you know, we've got questions about McKinney and the kind of depth that they have there too. So everything's going to have to be a little bit front loaded with this team. offensively wise. And I feel I really like the pickups they had with Golden and with Savion Williams, a kind of less heralded player, but that's what they needed to do to get the help. There's still questions about the secondary for me. It is a front seven, a bottom 10 front seven. That's my worry with those guys. But, like I said, after those electric starts last year from the wide receivers, they had to freshen up that room. They had to bring in some new blood to keep Jordan Love's arm being serviced, because that is a quality arm. That's a player that's really, is into year 3 now, really hitting his prime. They're going to want him to just keep excelling. And they've given him the weapons that he needs. Let the defense take care of it with the Parsons addition. Because like you said, this is really, a division that's really, really difficult, and they're going to have to put a mark on it offensively wise just to kind of get that separation. And you'd have to think, when it's all said and done, that it's going to be those two between them and the Lions that are really going to be competing in the business end in December.
Shane, we saw Josh Allen and the Bills last year. All the questions at the start of the season, well, who's your WR1? Who's Josh Allen going to be throwing the ball to? And they made a mockery of that because they produced one of the most explosive offensive units in the NFL last year. That's realistically what the Packers are looking for from Jordan Love, who, lest we forget, was injured last year. And you never know when players come back from injury, how fit are they and whether or not they're able to be the best versions of themselves. And maybe there was a lingering doubt over Jordan Love and the extent of his injury with how the rest of the season panned out for the Packers. They were never quite at the level that they were the season before. But they were able to do what the Packers do, which is, they're so good at the fundamentals. They're so well coached. They draft well every year because they develop well every year. They know how to integrate players and they improve year on year. They'll be looking at this division and thinking, maybe we can catch the Lions on the hop. Maybe the departure of those two coordinators is just the gap that we need to get in. Vikings effectively breaking in a rookie quarterback. I know he's in his second year, but he didn't play last year, obviously. Bears under new coaching. Yeah, they may expect to come forward, but we can skate through the gap here and we can win this division on the QT.
I absolutely think so. And I think if you actually look at what the Packers have done in this offseason now as a whole, they have 2 areas to improve on. Wide receiver, they brought in 2 in the draft, 1 in free agency to increase the options that Jordan Love has. McCall Harbin, is he the guy that everyone's going to be buying jerseys of? No. But if you don't necessarily have a WR1, you could find a way to make the offense work. To bring in Matthew Golden, bring in Savion Williams. And defensive line was the other area they need to improve. There's no better way of doing that than bringing in Micah Parsons. And I actually think, forgive me if this feels a little bit reactionary because we were recording just after the deal happens, I think this Micah Parsons trade really puts Green Bay in the driver's seat for this division. This first game against the Lions is now huge. In Lambeau Field, the main challengers for that NFC North title are going to be the Packers now. It's not the Vikings, despite how well they played now. The Packers have to look at themselves and say, it's our time to win this. We've improved on wide receiver. Our offensive line is good. Our run game is good. Our secondary is good. We now have the best defender in the league, and we're paying the money for it to keep pushing on. My only question is on Jordan Love. You said, of course, the fact he was injured last year, not quite sure how much we can really judge his full performance. And of course, the year beforehand, it took him a while to really build into the system that he was in. But the big thing with Jordan Love is a lot of times where he just gives away turnovers and stupid interceptions at exactly the wrong time. And we could talk about stats all day. We could talk about the important offensive line, but sometimes you just need your quarterback to be able to read situational football. That is what the Lions were really good at last year. That's why they were 15-2. They were able to do that. The Packers have to do that if they want to win the division this year. They have all the talent now. And they have Jordan Love being fit. There's 0 excuses now for Green Bay. Situational football counts here. And I'm really looking forward to seeing that first week against the Lions.